everybody. We are on our way to Caloundra today to dyno the Falcon. Now, there's not many dynos in Sunny Coast that can handle this much torque, so this dyno we're going to in Caloundra is like a pro mod setup. And Dad took it up yesterday. I've been at uni, but I've come today. They've been playing with extraction fans, trying to route all of the fumes out because it makes so much pressure out the exhaust that it's blowing the tube to bits. So Dad's made up a pretty hectic setup, and I'm gonna drive there now and I'll show you around. They had one run yesterday at about 700 horsepower and 55 psi, and that's just the first run, so plenty more to come, and yeah, keen to see it. So over my last uni break during Christmas time this year, came home from Brisbane and started work in the shed with Dad. It's the first real time that I've spent like days actually in the shed with him working on stuff, and it's been really cool. We started with the 86, which you guys might have seen on Instagram, putting a built 750 horsepower EJ25 turbo in an 86. It's been a fun process, and I've been filming a lot of it, and Dad and I are going to do an update on it, like a proper update for YouTube, so you can stay tuned for that. Haggers, the owner of the Falcon, had a whole crew flown in for this tuning session. Baldur from Iceland, who designed the ECU in the car, Chris from Colorado, who has heaps of diesel tuning experience, Chris from Boost Tech, and Matt from Just Autos, who is supplying us with a capable dyno for the big rig. Right off the bat, we were struggling to get the car to run due to the starter motor not getting enough power, and the engine turning over very cold due to a lack of glow plugs. After a jump start and some ether, the engine was warm and ready to put some power down. Let's get into it. Unfortunately, my audio didn't record here, but after that last dyno run, we could see that the turbo was over-spooling by about 30,000 RPM, so we got the okay to head into Brizzy and pick up a bigger turbo. Now, the turbo is all the same size, except we've increased the inducer size from 80mm to 88mm. This thing is about to get spicy. Got the car back from the dyno now. We had a pretty good success with it. We had a few challenges, some turbo issues, size issues, and Dad's going to give us a rundown of that.
So yeah, it was a pretty successful couple of days eventually. The biggest problem we had was trying to keep the ventilation system in one piece for the dyno. Obviously, a lot of gas comes out of that big pipe there, and it also comes out very violently. The first day we just basically kept blowing bits of dyno ventilation to bits, and had to do something about that. So overnight on Monday night, I went to a couple of truck shops, got some various bends, and ended up making it 5 to 6 inch, as long a pipe as I could find. Like, it was pretty limited sort of materials, and we ended up clamping that onto the bottom of the dump pipe and then feeding that off to the dyno ventilation system, which worked well for the majority of it, but once we started climbing up over 1,000 horsepower mark, it eventually wrecked the ventilation after that section, but we persevered and got there. In the meantime, we found, or Chris and Boulder found, that the turbo was over speeding from its rated speed limit, which is about 103,000, and to get the boost pressure that we needed. So we did overclock it a little bit, which is not uncommon. We did discuss that probably everybody that doesn't have a turbo speed sensor is running their turbos way past their rated speed, and they do last for the most part. They do last for quite a while. The speed rating is sort of based on, it'll do this for a long period of time, so we're only doing it for a very short period. But we knew that it probably needed to be changed, so to get the airflow, the boost pressure, etc., with a lower speed, and we just basically needed to upsize the turbo. So what we did was keep the turbine size, because it is quite oversized anyway, and get a larger compressor. So basically we bought a whole new turbo, kept the exhaust housing, and then sort of slid the new supercore in. So it's an 88mm inducer on the compressor instead of 80 now. So that's a fair upgrade. That worked. We're now able to get 70 psi boost, and so if you're talking in exhaust pressure as well, which is a big deal on a diesel, you don't want to have a big deal on any engine, I should say. We want the boost pressure to be around about the same as the exhaust drive pressure, and the lower the better on the exhaust drive pressure side. So we ended up being below 1 to 1. So the exhaust drive pressure is less than boost pressure. So I think it was late 60s and about 70 psi. So that's excellent. That means that system is working quite well. If you look at the graph, it's obviously very laggy. That was always going to be the case, but the dyno runs were done with the torque converter locked in third gear, so there is no torque converter function whatsoever, because the converter would probably slip too much and we wouldn't get accurate readings anyway. So when it's on the track, it's obviously going to have a torque converter that's going to let it flare right up to the point where the turbo is going to come on boost. The general strategy is first gear, trans brake, up on boost, take off, click second, then the converter locks, click third, the converter stays locked the whole time. So that's the plan. We don't really know what's going to happen until we get it on the track. But as with any dyno session, the whole point of it is obviously tune the engine, make the power, but also to learn what the car needs, what the engine needs, what the transmission needs. So we have done a bit of learning. I've got another big list to work with. We're going to do. I've actually removed the intercooler radiator for the time being. For what this is going to do on the road and on the strip, it's probably not going to need that radiator to do anything. So it's about 30 kilograms of weight. So weight is the enemy of horsepower. So I've removed that, and we're just going to rely on the tank water and ice to control the intake temperature. Boulder and Chris were pretty adamant that, unlike a petrol engine, you don't want the intake temperature to be like really low, because the engine, a compression ignition engine, relies on temperature in the cylinder for the fuel to ignite. So just another stat of what's happening, we've got about 100 degree intake temperature measured under the intercooler. That's very good, because that 70 psi boost has probably got 300 degrees outlet temperature, so that's in Celsius obviously. So that intercooler is working really well, which I knew it did because I've used it before. So that's good. Another thing that's working well, the engine had no issues whatsoever. It pretty much just worked as it should. The fuel system we did have problems with, and that was in hindsight because I missed the fact that it had a rising rate fuel pressure regulator on the actual pump. It's an AirDog 5G pump, so it's like the best one that they sell. It has a regulator on it, but I didn't realise that it was boost reference, so what we had to do was turn up the fuel pressure to very high at idle to make it deliver enough fuel at full noise. So now that I know that there's an actual boost reference there, I'll connect that up, and that will work pretty much the same as the petrol engine's regulator works. More boost pressure, more fuel pressure.
Another thing we noticed was how big of a role nitrous plays with these engines. Although it's a diesel, Dad basically referred to it as almost a nitrous engine as well, because it was very important when we were on the dyno, right?
Yeah, so the thing about nitrous and diesels is there's very little downside. They just love it. They run lean, so you can't lean it out and knock pistons like you can with a petrol engine really easily. So it's basically stuff as much nitrous as you can get into it, and that's one of the other things we're going to do is we're going to upgrade the solenoid and lines and add another bottle altogether, so we can get as much nitrous into that engine as possible. I think they run, I think Chris said about 23 to 1 is like the goal on nitrous. So they like to run lean, which is, and they still make good power. So that's going to be another thing that we're going to do. Basically just ordering more parts, doing a bit more plumbing. Pretty easy power, so it's a no-brainer. What else were we playing with?
Well, I mean, with power, we ended up making 1350, but
1330, I think.
well, we hit a limit with our high pressure fuel pump.
Yeah, the fuel pump's it's rated to around about that, so you can, there is like grey area around it depending on how lean you run it. Like if you run it on fuel only with no nitrous, I think we made 1090 horsepower, which is really good. So we made another couple of hundred horsepower with a 200 shot, which is obviously how it works. So because you can run it leaner and make power with nitrous, you can make more than the rated power, which is, yeah, it's like how they rate it, I don't know. But it's rated at like 1300 horsepower, so we probably can make a little bit more, but as it stands, that's more than what I was sort of aiming for, and it's a good place to start because getting the chassis right is the challenge now. So it's a whole other story. So engine's working, making power. Now we've got to work the chassis, work the converter, make it come on boost, and get it to the track.
What are you thinking with traction? Have we got traction control and stuff like that?
It does have functionality for traction control, not active traction control, but for us to use the data to see what's happening, and then basically it's kind of like run on like a race timer. If we know that it's losing traction on this shift or just after that, then you sort of make changes to the engine. It is quite easy to regulate that with various methods. So that's basically get to the track and see what happens. So that's the goal now. I've got to get some new belts in it, fresh tyres. It hasn't been raced for like 5 years, so the tyres are buggered. I'm going to put bigger back wheels on it, and I'm going to change the diff ratio to, I think I've settled on a 3.0 to 1, and we'll see how that works. There's also the option on a 2.75, but I don't want to go from one extreme to the other, so I'm just going to sort of pick the midpoint now and see how it works.
Sweet. I'm looking forward to see how it performs.
Well,
yeah. Alright, well, thank you guys for watching. Look forward to seeing how this thing goes, and stay tuned for more.
Speak. Speak. Speak.